Raikan Topaini is for Thai drama lovers only. Sawadee-kha, hello and welcome to Axelle's Guide to Thai Drama. I'm Axelle and the Thai drama we're discussing today is My Cherie Amour. I will note though that it's a French title that kind of doesn't make any sense, so as a French, I need to talk about that. Either in French we say ma chérie or mon chéri, or we say mon amour, which the first one, my darling, or the second one, my love. Or if we want to say my darling of my love, we can say ma chérie d'amour. So this title doesn't work at all. And it is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine when French is used, but it kind of makes no sense and it kind of has no tie in the actual story because there's nothing French about the story. But I will forgive this show because I know it's adapted from a novel and it was a choice of the writer, so I cannot do too much about that. I will preface this episode by saying that My Cherie Amour was actually one of the surprises that I had in 2024. It's a show that I didn't expect much of. Honestly, I kind of watched it expecting it to be kind of trash, and it ended up being one of my favorites of the years and a show that really kept me on my toes from beginning to end. So my first impression was that the show was announced with Tortana Pub and Yaya Urasaya, and I was a little intrigued by this pairing. I was like, I wasn't. It's not that I wasn't convinced, but I was a little dubitative, I would say. I was kind of like, oh, okay, like, let's see how it is. Gosh, how wrong was I to be dubitative, because girl, this pairing was fire. But to be honest, my first impression of the show was very, very surface level. I just saw a poster, I think on Instagram, and I was like, oh, okay, there's this show in the works. I didn't care much about it, but I knew that I would definitely give it a shot and at least watch the first episode. And from that poster on until I watched the first episode, I didn't really follow the production of the show. I didn't even watch the trailer of the show. I literally that's not true. I did watch the trailer of the show, now I remember, before watching it, and that was it. Now for the synopsis. So, this show is actually very, very complicated. It's set, I believe, in the 40s, and it follows Anong, played by Yaya, who is a rich, like kind of a nouveau rich kind of woman who has 4 older brothers and is looking to get married, and she is obviously extremely beautiful, so she has a lot of men kind of running after her, but she's very picky. She kind of stands her ground and she won't settle for any guy. She really needs to find the one for her. And we'll talk about Anong in details because she carries the show, in my opinion. She's one of my favorite female leads I've ever seen, if not my favorite. She's very, very interesting. And then we have on the other side, so this is, again, the things with Lacorns is that they always have family things. So this is the first family. You have Anong and her 4 brothers. Their parents, I believe, are deceased. It's kind of her 4 older brothers raising her, especially the oldest ones called Pisampong, who is unmarried because we'll learn later on he's gay. And then there is Pisa Wang and Pijamlong, who are kind of random and don't serve much purpose, to be honest. Pisa Wang is played by, we'll see, the guy in The Secret of Us that is very handsome. I was like, okay, girl, let's go. And then Pin Jamlong is, I know him from another, let me see where I know him from. Oh my god. He was in Make It Right, apparently. What the fuck? So I probably know him from that, because I haven't seen any of his other shows. These two brothers, to be honest, are very, very underpresent in the show. We'll talk about that. And then we have the youngest brother, but he's still older than Anong, called Piprasit, who is neurodivergent, and we'll also talk about Piprasit. He's also one of my favorite characters in this show. Then for the other family of the show, we have the family of Wishai, or in the show it's a little bit complicated because the translation and this often happens in Thai dramas. So in the show he's called Pipra by pretty much everyone, but in the translation, in the subtitles, they call him Wishai. So I'm gonna try to stick with Wishai. Thankfully, it's been a few months since I finished the show, because by the end, when the show ended, I would only call him Pipra, not Wishai. But now I'm gonna try to remind myself that it's Wishai, so we can be a little bit like everyone can understand it. And so Wishai is the oldest brother, and he has played by Tortanapov, and he has a youngest brother played by Min Piravich called Shat. And Shat sees Anong when they are on vacation, I think in Hua Hin or Pattaya, I forgot, and he kind of is immediately enamored. And in a way, to be honest, Shat and Anong make a lot of sense as a couple, because they're both young, they're both extremely like unstable, very like about material things, about appearances, about like looking cool, having fun, and so in a way they kind of make sense to at least be friends, but of course at the beginning Shat wants to marry Anong. And then we also have the character of Janton, which I will explain a little bit later. And basically you have these families, but the thing is that Anong actually ends up falling in love with Wishai, played by Thor, who is very, very standoffish, very, he's not a Natorn, he's a judge, I believe. He's a judge, and so he really is someone who, he's a widow as well. He's very withdrawn, he's very in his own thing, and he doesn't see Anong's advances at all. And so the mother of both Wishai and Chat is extremely, extremely demanding, controlling. She's a very interesting character. We're going to talk about her for sure. And basically this is a story of how Anong and Wishai are going to end up together through beautiful aesthetics of the 1940s in Bangkok, and through a lot of drama. Honestly, this is the best summary I can do, because this show is very, like, it's a very simple plot, but girl, they put layers into it, and it was a little bit crazy, to be honest. I don't think I can summarize it better than this. Now for the characters, I've already talked a little bit about it. Let's talk about them a little bit more. So again, we have Anong. Anong honestly could be a character that is extremely unlikable, extremely like bitchy, extremely not a girl's girl, which she kind of is, but, and low-key a pick-me, but she works, and we're going to talk about it is due to Yaya's performance. We're going to talk about it in the later sections, but Anong is this very playful, she's childish woman who kind of has always had whatever she wanted served on a silver plate. She's always had men kind of like bend to her will, and that makes her a little bit capricious, but that makes her also, the performance makes her very fun. Like, she's someone who knows what she wants, and she is in that sense a strong woman. I think like calling a character a strong woman can have a little bit of, it can be a little bit unclear. I think a strong woman is a little bit overdone these days as an idea, and it's sometimes like a little bit like, yes, feminism, which this show does have. Like, what in the first episode, I believe, Anong has this whole like voiced over about like being a woman is like this, blah blah blah, even in our time. But I'm like, basically she's going against like society, which is not so true. Like, in a way, Anong does participate in the society of the time. She's not like very groundbreaking. Yes, in some ways she is. We see her being like a model for clothes. We see her being a businesswoman. So she is working. She is like, she's in charge of the mall that her family owns. So in that sense, she is kind of a girl boss, kind of feminist icon of the era as a character. But she also like definitely finds her satisfaction satisfaction, her role into being married and having kids, so which is not so much feminism like prone. And in a way, feminism is about like women choosing their own path. So in that way, she is overall a good example, I would say, of a feminist character, even though it's a little bit anachronistic because, again, she's from the 40s. But so Anong, for me, really carries the show. She's a little bit sassy. She is like flirty. She is just such a fun character. I absolutely adore her. And what I love about her is that she's very flawed as well. For me, if you will see, my favorite characters are always flawed characters. I cannot stand characters that are one-dimensional, that don't have flaws to them. I think flaws make characters more likable, just like flaws in real life make people more likable. I actually love the people in my life more because they have flaws, because they're humans. I think their flaws are endearing, just like I think a good character with good flaws is also very endearing, and it's definitely the case for Anong. Then we have Wishai. Wishai, for me, grew on me. At the beginning, we don't really know much about him. We know he's hot. Damn, the costume, oh my god. We're gonna talk about it, but the costume design of this fucking show, I swear. Oh my god. The costume design is so good. And he looks like a snack. Okay. I do adore Tanapop. We're gonna talk about yeah. This show did change my mind about her, but Tanapop, I've always loved him. You can refer to my Spare Me Your Mercy episode. I talked about how have been following him and how much he's won my heart over in that episode. I love him. He's become one of my favorite characters of all time, really, without a doubt. And this role really helped. Okay, he's hot, but in like a zaddy way. I was like, ooh, okay, like, because he's a brother, he's supposed to be like well in his 30s, like a widow. I was like, yes, daddy, you know what I mean? Like, I loved it. And Wishai is very interesting because he's extremely talented, extremely smart. There are these scenes in the show where we can see him like kind of having this kind of Sherlock Holmes moment from the BBC, if you know that show, like where he's just deducing like random things. Like he basically like deduces that P Sompong is gay just like out of nowhere, which was a little bit like they kind of pulled that out of their asses, to be honest, the screenwriters. But you know, he's kind of like super smart, like very established, very like responsible. He's the responsible one in the family, but he's also the overlooked one in the family. So it's very interesting. I really enjoyed the family dynamic of this because, as I said, his mother is extremely controlling, extremely like berating actually. And at the beginning of the show, she's like obsessed with Chat, which is Wishai's little brother. But then by the end of the show, she kind of switches her favorite. And it's very, very interesting. Then in terms of Chat for me is a character that actually at the beginning, I loved him. And then slowly he lost me a lot. But at the beginning, again, as I said, he's kind of the male version of Anong. He's very flirty, very fun, like a little immature, but in a charming way, in my opinion. But by the end of the show, he is paired with Jantorn, played by Ling Ling Kwon, my queen. And I literally would have loved this pairing if it was better written. For me, it's one of the literally Achilles heel of the show for sure. But yeah, so Chat is, by the end of the show, is like extremely deceptive, extremely dumb, and he's kind of a bad partner to Jantorn, sorry. And so he kind of lost my favors with time. Then for Jantorn, so I was a little bit biased. Honestly, I fell in love with Ling Ling Kwon in The Secret of Us. I don't think The Secret of Us was that good of a show, but it was fine. It was fine, by the way, but we'll have an episode on it for sure. But it was a fun show, but I fell in love with her. Obviously, she's one of the most beautiful women ever. Like, she's absolutely gorgeous. I think no one can deny that. And she has an air of elegance to her that I love, okay? And I couldn't hate her character. I mean, her character is not hate-worthy, but in this show, it's kind of a bland-ass character. Like, she's just here serving cute looks and kind of to make Yaya's character Anong jealous at times. And I'm kind of like, okay, you know, like, whatever. So her character, like Jantorn, is not like the most interesting character of the show at all. I don't mind her, though. Again, I could stare at Ling Ling Kwon all day bitch. So that's what I have to say. Then you have Pi Pong, again, it's the like closeted queer character, like queer older brother. He's kind of random, kind of serves a lot, like he does serve the plot, but he's also like Wishai's friend. So he and Wishai are supposed to be the same age, which I think makes them like about 35 or something, which Anong is 23. So there is a little bit of age gap, which is not realistic because I do believe that Yaya and Thor are actually the same age or very, very close in age. Maybe Yaya is like 1 or 2 years older, but yeah, it's kind of funny. And so Pi Pong is kind of, the dad figure to Anong in this. And he's kind of, whatever, he moves the plot along. He's queer, so of course I cannot hate him, you know what I mean? I cannot hate any queer character, bestie. It doesn't work like that. And then we have Pi Prasit. Pi Prasit is again the youngest male brothers to Anong, but still older than her. So he's neurodivergent. I think he's a little bit like autistic coded. And I don't know how to I don't really know how to feel about his character. I think at this point I'm a little bit tired of the way that autistic characters or neurodivergent characters in general are portrayed in Thai media. I mean, I think it's a problem in almost all medias, but in Thai media it's worse because I feel like you could take all these characters and they all are acted the same exact way. If you take Shimon Washiwari's character in Homeschool, if you take Pi Prasit in this, and if you take... I haven't seen the show, I just saw the mock trailer, but I can guarantee you take Ganatapan's role in Leap Day for GMMTV, and it's kind of gonna be the same acting where it's a childish character, a childish kind of person. The thing with Pi Prasit is that like he's Anong's like best friend and closest person in her family, but he's kind of like very, very secondary. He is kind of like there to move the plot along and be cute and get along with Wishai. I actually really love his friendship with Wishai, but he doesn't have anything of his own. I think I'm kind of getting sick of neurodivergent characters in these shows always having the same traits, which is like very childish, unable to hide their emotions, like very like unable to read cues, which this I guess is oftentimes like accurate to a lot of like autistic people, neurodivergent people, but not all, first of all. I feel like it's always overacted, and I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the actors. I just think these roles in Thai dramas are not written to be accurate, and they're not written to be respectful of real life neurodivergent people, and they don't take into account that's the most important part for me. They don't take into account the fact that neurodivergent people are not a monolith, and there's so many different people with different traits. You cannot boil it down to always the same 5 traits, which has been the case in Thai dramas. And so it's a little bit unnerving for me to see a character like this. That being said, I actually love Pi Prasit. I think he's extremely charming. Yes, he's overacted. I know the actor now is gonna be in a BL, so I was like, oh, okay. But I don't know, I feel like it's just a little bit hard for me to be like, yes, I love Pi Prasit, and not acknowledge the fact that his character has some problematic aspects to it. And what I hated the most is that he's not developed at all. I would have loved to see Pi Prasit actually get a love of his own in the show, because the thing with this show is like it's mostly about love. So I like, he doesn't work. He's just like, literally, he's kind of just a lapdog for Anong. And as much as I love the relationship, like he's rooting for Anong, he pushes Anong towards Wishai because he knows like she loves him. So it's not like, it's not a bad, he's a good character. He serves the plot very much, but he doesn't have a plot of his own, when even the other brothers, we're gonna see the 2 other brothers, we barely see them. And this is one of my like criticism of the show. They have more storylines than Prasit, which is unnerving, because then you're like, if 3 out of 4 brothers have a storyline and the only brother who's neurodivergent doesn't, for me it's very clear that this is an issue because he's an autistic coded character. And so so if we switch to Pi Sawang and Pi Jamlong, for me, something that I didn't too much enjoy in this show is that we don't see them. I feel like it's really interesting to have these four brothers kind of in charge of their little sister. Yes, it's a little bit like sexist, like we decide who you can get married, blah, blah. We're in the 40s, you know what I mean? It's a little bit realistic. But I wish we would have seen all four brothers equally. I feel like, again, they're here to only serve the plot, and the plot is very, very much like inclined into romance and shows much more actually of Wishai's family than it does Anong. Anong really is the main character of family, which makes sense because she's the baddest bitch of them all. But I just wish it would have been a little bit more equal. Then we have the mother of Wishai and Chat. The mother of Wishai and Chat, I actually really enjoyed the performance. We're going to talk about her, but I think she's a very interesting character. She is highly like, she's a bad person most of the show, then she kind of is redeemed towards the end. She hates Anong throughout most of the show, and she is very, very mean and very demeaning to her sons. She doesn't treat them right for sure. And it is an issue, but I think at the end she does acknowledge her flaws. I think one of the issues why I didn't like her characters, and that's the feminist in me, is that I haven't even mentioned her yet, but Chat and Wishai have a sister. And the reason why I haven't mentioned her is because she's almost useless to most of the plot. She's a little bit useful at the beginning, and then after that she serves absolutely no purpose, which pisses me off. And okay, you know what, let's switch. So the sister is called Choi, and Choi basically married to a guy, married first, like in the family, to a guy that the mother didn't approve of. By the way, their father is dead. And it's a big story because the father died after being in debt. Like basically he was accused of embezzlement, and he never really got to like save his honor because it was not true, and because he died. I think he killed himself. So because of that, then he kind of ruined the reputation of his family. And the mother will forever, like, is very, very, like, love the father, but she's also very resentful towards him because he left them with a ruined reputation. And she's been trying to redeem their reputation all along, which is why she asked Wishai to be a judge and Chat, to be a soldier. And so Choi is kind of the forgotten one, which makes sense. Like, she's a woman in the 40s. Of course, the mother is gonna care more about the sons. Like, this is very, very realistic in that sense, but it really pissed me off because you see Choi. So Choi is married to this guy, and this guy is like very much dying. By the way, the guy who plays her husband is the guy from The Promise, the main guy. So I was like, oh, okay, like, this is really a reunion of so many random shows. Anyways, but all of that to say that Choi is really the forgotten one. After her husband died, finally her mother accepts her back into the home, and raises her daughter called, I think she's called Nin or something. And who's kind of the cutie and kind of also bonds Wishai and Anong together, because obviously cute little girl with like two people who are gonna fall in love, it's always cute, like, to have them play kind of family. But Choi for me is kind of one of the only level-headed people in the fucking show. She's always on the side of like justice and truth, and she has no storylines of her own again. She's a little bit like Piprasit, but even worse because she doesn't even move the plot along. She's just there to witness the plot and be shocked, and that's it. And it kind of pisses me off because I feel like it's so unfair that she's so underdeveloped compared to her brother in the show. And I just wish she would have at least gotten a romance. Like, if you're gonna reduce women to their romances, I mean, this is a show about romance, so I don't even mind in that aspect. Like, give her something to do. Like, in a way, like, maybe even make fucking Piprasit and Choi like fall in love. I literally don't care. But it just like kind of pissed me off because I felt like she was just there for no fucking reason. And the only reason was because Jen Thorne, played by Ling Ling, is the brother of Choi's husband who died. So after her husband died, Shen Thorne also kind of enters the life of Wishai, of Anong, of Chat. And that's how she gets intertwined. It's kind of this love square between Wishai, Anong, Chat, and herself. That's kind of the main characters. There's a lot of other characters, but girl, we don't have time for that, okay? We don't have time. There's a lot of like dramas and like trying to get Chat married to a girl, and so it's a very, very heavy, thick plot. But if you see, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of moving pieces in this show, but actually the interesting characters, the ones that are well written and well developed, in my opinion, there's only two of them, and it's Wishai and Anong. And for me, it's gonna be the strength of the show, but it's also gonna be kind of its downfall, which we're gonna talk about. Now for the cast and acting, I think I've already commented quite a lot. I think it's really interesting. Like, I knew a lot of these actors again from other shows, like Thor. I've known him from fucking countless shows. Yaya, I saw her in the Crown Princess, the Brother of the Year movie with Pisani. I've seen her in Love You to Death with Bright. Recently, like a year ago, I think. I've seen her in quite a few shows. And the thing with Yaya is that the first time that I saw her was in The Crown Princess alongside Nadesh, which is her real life partner. They're kind of a power couple in the industry. And the thing with that show is that it's quite bad. And I didn't like her acting at all. Oh, I saw Yaya in Bad Romeo alongside Mario. And also in that, I think her acting is fine until she has to do like kind of like a shocked or surprised or sad face. I think sometimes it's a little bit too overdone. And here in this show, I have to say, in My Cherie Amour, she redeems herself. I loved her. In my opinion, she really carried the show, and her performance as Anong is the most important in the whole show, in my opinion, because again, Anong could be a very annoying female lead character, and she could be something that she could be really annoying, she could be really unlikable and really turn off most of the viewers of the show. Let's not forget that those kind of romance lacorns, most of the viewers are women, and so if the female lead is not likable, then the women are going to be turned off, okay? And women tend to be quite critical of other women, especially like basic kind of normie women in a way. And so in my opinion, this performance needed to be just like on the line. Like, you could not cross the line at all. You had to stay on the line. You had to be like perfect, because you have to be sassy but not too sassy. And the thing with Anong is she's also very confident. She's a very confident woman. And the thing with confident characters is that it's very hard to make them look confident without necessarily like making them arrogant. And Anong is a little bit arrogant, but she's not like that arrogant, even though Yaya is obviously one of the most beautiful women on this earth. So it needed a really like good performance, you know what? A really just performance. And I think Yaya delivered, and I think Anong was the role she was made to play. I tried to think about other actresses getting this role, and I could not. I think the way she like would raise her eyebrows and have this little smirk, this is so Yaya, and it worked so well with Anong. She really carried the show, in my opinion. I think she made it work. I think Anong could have been a really terrible character, really unlikable with the wrong performance, and to be honest, I don't think we could have gotten a better, more just performance of her than Yaya. So I have to say that I tip my fucking hat off to Yaya. I have badmouthed her in my heart for a long time. I've never really gotten why people love her so much. I've always said like, yes, she's beautiful, but I couldn't really love her acting yet. This role has changed my mind. I think she was excellent in this. Excellent. Then for Tortanapop, I truly believe Tortanapop has never had a bad role. I think he eats literally every time. He is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 or top 5 best Thai actors out there. I'm never nervous when I see him getting a role, because I know he's gonna slay every single time, which is very good. And here I really loved his performance. I really loved it. At first I was a little bit hesitative about Wishai, but after a few episodes, you're like, oh, I get it. Like, Wishai is very interesting because when he's alone and when he's with Anong, he's quite different. It's in a way that love like kind of changes him, and I kind of love that. I love when a man is kind of like standoffish, kind of like to himself, and then in love he's literally just the biggest simp. I'm like, yes, I mean, in my opinion, the greatest love stories told, it's always the man being a simp. Like, the man need to be a simp for his lady or it doesn't work. That's what I have to say. And I think that Wishai has also his, like, annoying traits where he doesn't pick up on Anong being in love with him at all, even though it's so fucking obvious. And he doesn't, like, really confess. He doesn't really speak, like, he doesn't speak his mind. He keeps everything inside. It works with his characters. It makes sense, but it's kind of his flaw. Definitely his, like, biggest flaw in the show, where you're like, girl, like, you need to wake up and stand up, you know what I mean? But I also really liked him as a character. Like, he is very, like, handsome, very, like, definitely, like, quiet, handsome, kind of male lead, and ooh, Zaddy! Now for Shat. So for Min Piravich in this, I think he did good. I think Min Piravich is very good at this kind of, like, very immature, a little bit, like, sassy, a little bit fun characters. I think he's actually better suited, in my opinion. Actually, I did like him in Love by Chance, especially Love by Chance 2. I think he's good for angst as well. But here, I liked his performance. The only thing that I didn't like, we'll talk about it more, is his chemistry with Ling Ling, who plays Shantorn, who becomes his wife. Then we have, as I said, Ling Ling playing Shantorn. Nothing exceptional, like, she's good in this, but honestly, the material did not help her. Older brothers, I would say the acting is okay, like, it's good. I didn't see anything wrong. Again, I think that the actor who plays Piprasit, who's called Peter Pan, tiny nicknames, anyways, this guy is overplayed it a lot, but that's kind of the way that all neurodivergent characters are played, and I don't think it was, like, his choice. I think it was just the director's choice. Not sure, but I don't blame him so much, and I think he still had some good moments. I think he made Piprasit quite a lovable character, so I can't blame him. Then we get to the mother of Shat, Choi, and Wishai. Girl, that mother ate that shit up, okay? I think the mother, especially towards the end, like, when she starts looking at her son, like, with glossy eyes, and you're like, oh, she's gonna cry, but she doesn't fully cry, but you can see, like, the emotion on her face. She ate that up. I was gagged. She was one of the best actors of this whole show. She was the one, like, that I kind of, like, remember the most, and I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, so I think the acting was, for the most part, really good, but definitely the ones who got the most opportunities to, like, prove their acting were Tor, Yaya, Min, and the mother. Now for the writing. So the writing is always the biggest part. To be honest, it would be so hard for me to talk about everything about the writing, because this show, again, it's supposed to be a simple plot, but it's so complex. They kept, like, it's kind of playing, like, chess with the characters, because at the beginning we have Shat liking Anong. Anong kind of likes Shat, but more like a friend, and then she falls for Wishai, but she's still kind of stringing Shat along, and then Shat is gonna propose to Anong, and he has, like, a kind of rehearsal, and he brings his brother Wishai there, and Wishai sees that and then realizes he likes Anong, but then the show out of nowhere tells us that Wishai actually likes Jentorn. This is gonna be my first issue with it. We're gonna talk about it. And then for so many more episodes, then Shat proposes to Anong for real. Anong rejects him, so Shat is heartbroken. Anong tries to send signals to Wishai, but he doesn't see it. So at some point, she's heartbroken because she learns that apparently, again, Wishai is supposed to love Shantorn, which is not true, okay? Then in the end, Shantorn actually also likes Wishai at some point, so they almost get married at some point, but then Wishai says, no, I cannot get married, I'm not gonna get married with anyone, I'm a widow, blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, out of nowhere, Shat and Shantorn fall in love and get eloped. They literally run away and get eloped. Then they are in hiding for a while, then they come back and they get married for real, but their real marriage ceremony gets compromised because Shat lied, okay? And then in the end, he kind of still wins Shantorn away, and they kind of live together, but he's a terrible husband to her. He's bad. And then Anong and Wishai, I forgot, like, for a while, they don't talk to each other, but then, like, family stuff, blah, 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 they get close again, and then Anong tells her love to Wishai for a while. She kind of stalks him, she kind of pursues him, and to be honest, Anong pursuing Wishai is one of the most interesting things about the show. I usually don't like a woman running after a man. ain't no man worth it, okay? No man is worth running after him, okay? But in this case, it works because Wishai, again, is very, like, in his own corner, very unaware, and Anong is, like, very flirty, and I also like that she has the pursuer role in that idea, because it's in that sense, because it's set in the 40s, and I don't see a lot of women pursuing the man that they love back in the 40s. So I kind of like this role reversal. It's interesting in that setting. So all of that to say, this is a very confusing show. Also, before Shad gets married to Shantorn, he almost gets married 5 times to another girl he hates, with like a very asshole-ish family. There's a lot of like family drama, family things, but most of it is really centered around the family of Wishai, Shad, Choi, and their mother. And well, again, Choi doesn't fucking matter. She could just as well not be there, but anyways, and so it's a very confusing show. There's a lot of things going on. It's not confusing, but it's a, like, in a way, it's very interesting. I think the cleverness of this show and the way this show really succeeds is that it took a very simple plot that should be very straightforward and managed to, like, spin it into like a very complicated plot of betrayal of 2 brothers liking the same woman and proposing, then getting rejected, then like starting to date behind the back of the other. Like, it's very complicated, and I kind of enjoy that, even though at the time it's frustrating. But to be honest, I do feel like Lacorns must be frustrating. I think the essence of Lacorns in themselves is having like annoying characters, having things that don't make too much sense but just are done to advance the plot, to make it entertaining. And in this sense, I think this show was extremely successful. I think my issue with this show is that I think at times, I think the beginning of the show worked more than the second half. I'm gonna be honest, the first half of this show, I was obsessed. I binged when I was not binging the episode. I was thinking about this show. I was obsessed, okay? It was literally on my mind 24/7. Like, I was having dreams about it. Like, I was obsessed with this show. And I think this show is really powerful in that. I think I've never watched a Lacorn that has kept me on my toes as much as this one. And even like Lacorns that I love more, like In Family We Trust, which is barely a Lacorn, but kind of a Lacorn, or Hwajai Sila. Both of those have Tortanapop as the main lead, by the way. Hwajai Sila is like a better Lacorn. I think I liked it more, but it didn't keep me on my toes as much as this one. This one like really it ate. But the second half, I think, is a little bit more slow when they start dating, because at some point, like, Wishai is sent in like the south of Thailand, and Anong kind of like flees her house to go live with him, but they're not married, so it leads to a lot of shenanigans. I felt like that side of the story was a little bit less exciting. It was a little bit more like, okay, they're falling in love, like their relationship is progressing, but it was kind of it. And I wish like we would have just gotten a little bit more of that. I think that the like super thick plot should have been a little bit longer, and then the period when they're already dating should have been a little bit shorter, because by the end I was like, okay, it's getting a little bit long. So this would be like my issues with the writing. I think also the writing made Shad a very unlikable man, and I think it didn't really work. I think for me, there's moment where I see Shad and Wishai's relationship as brothers, as there's this scene like where they're kind of pour their hearts out to each other, and it's very beautiful, and I really wanted more from this brothers relationship. I think in a way now, since I watched To Sir With Love, I want like a strong brothers relationship. I think like that relationship in To Sir With Love between Film and Tong Tong, I think the relationship between these two characters in Do So With Love that are brothers was so beautiful. And I mean, I'm an only child, so for me, I think sibling relationships that are very strong, that you can see are each other's rock, always feel very cute to me, because it's something very foreign to me. And in that way, I just wish like that the great relationship that Wishai and Shad have at the beginning of the show kind of extended to the end, and the way they kind of ruin Shad's character, because basically Shad's character starts like investing shit, he starts lying to his wife, he starts like doing a bunch of stuff where you're like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And that's also really affected the chemistry between Shantorn and between Chanton and Min, because they don't have much of it. Anyways, we're gonna talk about it. But yeah, and so it's just the writing for me was at the end, towards the end, a little bit more lackluster and didn't really hit the way that it hit in the first like 8 or 9 episodes, where I was hooked, bestie. I was hooked, okay? But I think it's fine, it's okay, but it definitely could have been better if the writing stayed like super high through the whole show. And I also wish, again, that they would have developed the side characters a little bit more, because I think relying so much on Wishai and Anong for everything at the beginning of the show works when they're not together yet, but doesn't so much work when they're already together and there's a lot less. I mean, there's still some drama, there's still some tension, some plot lines to be solved, but not as much. I wish that then we could see a little bit more about the other characters. I also think that, again, Chat and Jantorn are extremely underdeveloped. For me, it was a problem because they're kind of set up as the secondary couple of the show, but they are not really shippable. We don't really see so much why they fell in love with each other, how we see how they got together, but it doesn't feel like, it doesn't tug at your heartstrings. We don't really see after a while they're still together, because Jantorn is extremely like passive and Chat is a fucking manipulative liar, so it just doesn't work in that aspect. And I wish they would have made Chat and Jantorn much like more developed and better written, because it would have just worked better. I think Min is quite famous. Ling Ling is very famous at the moment. I feel like they could have had this pairing. Of course, it would never like trump the Ling like ship, but still, you know, like they could have at least put in a little bit effort in this pairing. And I feel like all the efforts were really focused on Wishai and Anong, which again do carry the show and are amazing. We're gonna talk about it. I love this pairing, but I do think the other side characters deserved more. The brothers deserved to be more developed. Choi deserved to be more developed. And the relationship between Chat and Jantorn, and even their personalities, what they're doing in their life, definitely we needed to see more of them, for sure. Now, for the cinematography. So this show, in terms of like cinematography, I do think it's a little bit above, definitely, other Lacorns. Okay, so if you don't know, there are definitely two types. There is series and Lacorn series, like it's everything like that GMMTV produces, that like, you know, everything you watch pretty much. But like Lacorns are a lot more for TV, like they feel a little bit more of a certain time, like of 10-20 years ago, and they're a little bit more repetitive. It's a lot of the same plots, but here, because this Lacorn is set in the 40s, so it's a historical Lacorn in that way, it of course is gonna have a lot more original like settings and backgrounds. You know that when I do talk about cinematography, it's more about like the camera work on top of the great locations. I think here the locations are beautiful. I think they do really stand out, and I think it's very important to talk about the cultural reset that this show was on Thai culture in a way that is very interesting, because actually before I started even watching the show, I think at that time only 3 episodes were out or something, I saw a TikTok with the soundtrack of this show called The Trouble Is by Valette Vautier, and it was literally, and it was someone dressed in the 40s attire, same as the show, going to the setup of the show, which is the Ministry of Defense in Bangkok, which looks very of that time and is featured in the show. This is when they film kind of all the scenes where they're outside and where Anong is like driving. And so it kind of became a hub for a few months of people going there, dressing up in like really cute, like kind of 40s style dresses and doing their hair and everything, and going to make TikToks and make content there. It was kind of a real big trend in Thailand. Thai people love trends. They love like taking content for social media. I think much more than in the West. It's much more generalized. Like even non-influencers will do things that only influencers in the West would do. And so it became a huge deal. And for me, it was kind of a witness of the success of the show, not only as a show in itself, but also to democratize this kind of aesthetic, this building of the Ministry of Defense, which is featured into it, and kind of show the impact of the show on people. Even some people, I'm sure, didn't even watch the show, but the fact that this show in itself, the aesthetic of the show is so pregnant, is so original, that you can boil it down to the Ministry of Defense in a certain look, and people can boil down the aesthetic of the show and take a TikTok with the soundtrack of the show. You're like, okay, this show can be boiled down, the aesthetic of the show can be boiled down to very, very simple things, which in my opinion makes for a very strong show in terms of cinematography and aesthetic, which is quite rare. I think Thai dramas are great, but most of them have very similar aesthetics, which is the case for almost all dramas. Like all K-dramas kind of have similar aesthetics, except for certain exceptions, and that's totally fine. But the thing is, I really enjoy when a show has its strong identity that can be seen in the general public on social media or other places, has the same impact, you know what I mean? And so in terms of cinematography, like for the camera work, there's nothing like too crazy, but I think this show is very interesting. I think this show is very beautiful. I love historical shows because they just look so out of this world. It's things that we're not familiar with, especially I'm not familiar with like the 1940s in Thailand. And so it's very, and even when I'm familiar with the 1940s, I'm familiar with the ones in France. So I couldn't, for me, it showed me new aesthetics, new buildings, new things that I didn't know. So in this sense, I would say the cinematography was good, but yes, the camera work is very basic still. So it's quite good. Then we have the ships and the chemistry. So the ships, as I said, we have Wishai and Anong. We're going to talk about them. They're the main ship. I love them. And then we have Shat and Janton. I think I've talked a lot about them already. I think they're kind of a flop for me. I think they didn't work. The chemistry for them was also a little bit weird. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the actor's fault, if it's the script's fault. I don't know if it's the director's fault. I don't know what it is. I didn't feel a lot of chemistry between Min and Ling Ling, which was a little bit surprising because I would consider both of them to be quite solid actors. So I was a little bit surprised to see like so little chemistry. They seem very, very forced together. So I just didn't like this pairing, and I didn't think the chemistry was good. Now let's get onto the main pairing. Anong and Wishai. One thing about Yaya, even before I thought she was a good actress, when I still thought she was not that good, I always thought that her chemistry with others was so good. I loved her in Bad Romeo with Mario. I hated Bad Romeo. It was one of the most infuriating shows I've ever watched. But her chemistry with Mario in that drama, in that Lacorn, so good. So good. This is better. This pairing worked in ways that, oh my god, I was blushing, I was kicking my feet, I was screaming at my screen. It was so good. I think the way that Anong and Wishai work is, there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think the main thing is that it's a pairing we haven't really seen before. I think we have seen like confident and a little sassy female leads and more quiet male leads, but they are special. They have layers, and they are very, like, they shouldn't, I think this is a pairing that shouldn't work, but the fact that they shouldn't work makes it work even more. You know what I mean? I feel like when we say opposites attract, my parents are the proof. My parents are the most opposite people ever, and they've been together for over 30 years when all of my other friends' parents have divorced. And I've always, in my opinion, loved opposite attracts couple the most, because I do believe that it is a real thing. I think the more opposite you are, not on everything, I think your values need to be aligned, but the more opposite in personality you are, the more you can complete each other and make a really efficient partnership. And so this is the case for Wishai and Anong. I think they are so good together. They complete each other. The way that Wishai doesn't dare to do some things, Anong will push him, and so she makes the romance and the plot advance on her own by being such a like fun and like strong character who knows what she wants. But at the same time, the way that Wishai is very patient with her through her more like childish ways also makes it work. everything, every flaw that one has, the other completes, and every quality that one has, the other completes. So they really complete each other so well. And then we have the chemistry between these two. Damn, they ate that up. I have to say, the chemistry between Thor and Yaya in this show is some of the best chemistry I've seen ever. It's really good. It's electric, it works, it gave me butterflies, like it worked really well. In my opinion, this is an iconic pairing that I'm not ready to forget. I think I will still think about this show and this pairing for the years to come. And that's the thing. I think this show, in its shortcomings, as I said, it kind of doesn't really develop the other characters and kind of really focuses and hones in to like this ship, which yes, they are the main characters, yes, they are the main ship, so it does make sense. But in that aspect, the fact that this ship is so good kind of saves the show, because imagine the show had put everything to focus on this pairing and it didn't work as well, then the show would be way worse. But because the pairing works, at least you're like, okay, I get why they focus so much on it, because they slay, they eat. I love them so much, and I really love this pairing. I do think in the end they're a little bit boring, but that's the unconventional bitch in me. Whenever I see like married couples after years talking about their kids, I'm like, oh gosh, like that's just, I'm not judging people who are married with kids, but for me, it's like such the opposite of what I see for my life, and I think of an exciting thing to have in a couple. So for me, I was kind of like, oh, okay, like you became a little bit basic, a little bit boring, but I think that's my own personal bias, okay? But I do think this pairing is incredible. I think they really worked so well together. I think most of the pairings oftentimes, I do think though in Lacorns that usually they are really good at putting like pairings that are quite opposites attract. I think Lacorns kind of thrive on the opposites attract trope a lot more than like shows, especially like BL and GL shows. I feel like it's not so much the case in BL and GL shows. Like we don't have these kinds of pairings where it's like complete opposites, but here it just works so well. And the chemistry is so good. Next, we have the music. So the music of this show, I think the main soundtrack, The Trouble Is Again by Violet Vautier, is like so good because it is like a ballad. Like Thai people love their ballads, okay? But it's not very like 1940s style, but it has a little bit of like nostalgia into the song. And the fact that we hear it every time like the show starts and every time the show ends, like it's very repetitive. Like we hear it a lot throughout the show, and usually sometimes it bothers me when I feel like they did one song from the soundtrack and they keep recycling it. But here it didn't bother me because I think the song fits the emotional beats of the show so well that when we hear "The trouble is I love you so," I'm like, yes, girlie, let's cry together. You know what I mean? Like, I ate that up. I love that. But apart from that, I didn't really notice the rest of the music. Like, I think most of it worked really well with the show. I think it was not super noticeable, but as you know, I rarely ever, like, compliment the music. I think most of the time the music in a show is there to be forgotten in a way, because it's there to accompany like what the scenes is meant to tell us. So like, this scene is sad, let's put some sad music. This scene is happy, let's put some happy music. And I think oftentimes good music is music that is not noticed. So for me, it's very rare that like a soundtrack of a show like really like works with me so much, but this one was good. I do like the main like opening credits and ending and end credits songs. Then we have the costume design. So I don't often talk about costume design on here, but here I think it is part of the aesthetic that I talked about in the cinematography aspect. Here I think the costume design does a lot. I think what's so fun about like historical like shows and shows that take part in another place, another time, is that you can see the style of a time that you did not live through, okay? And it's very interesting because this show, like the style in the 90s 40s Thailand is actually, I would say, quite similar to, I mean, I would love like to have a fashion historian talk about the like the clothes in the show, are they accurate or not? Again, that's not me, okay? But I think it was interesting because they kind of look very Western. I think the costumes and everything look very, very Western. I think it makes sense because Anong is supposed to be like, she's a Hafi. She has studied like in the US, I believe, or something, like she studied abroad. But even like the clothes like that Wish Eyes wear, the costumes like are very like the tuxedos, things like that are very like Western coded in my opinion. But so it's interesting. I would love to hear more about it. I actually love fashion and I love like costumes in movies and series, and here I think it really participated. Like we have these characters in old ass buildings, in old ass locations, looking like very vintage, with vintage decors, vintage settings, vintage like accessories, and then we have these outfits. And I have to say, perhaps my favorite thing of the whole show, is Anong's fashion. Anong's fashion in this is so iconic. Literally, every time I would see her enter a new scene with a new outfit, my jaw would be on the floor and I would be like finger snapping. Like I felt like I was in a fucking fashion show because every single outfit ate. Okay, she would change her hairstyle. She would change the accessories. She's so good. The costume design for Anong, like the other characters are cute or whatever, but they have like very like repetitive styles, kind of boring, which in a way works because Anong is supposed to be that bitch. Anong is the main character of the show. She is the girl that stands out. She's a girl that doesn't really conforms to what other women do in that society, and so it works with her. And she's also like, she owns a mall, so of course she knows a lot about fashion. She's been kind of a model before, she's traveled a lot, so it makes sense for her character to dress well. And in fact, I think it is an integral part of her character, and I love that they went ham. Like they didn't just put her in beautiful outfits, but sometimes they would style her hair and whatever in a little bit of a crazy way, like a little bit insane. Like you're like, okay, Anong herself, like the character did not like put her hair in all these kind of things, but it just fucking worked. You're like, yes, Anong is extra like that. Like, yes, she would do this. So it just works so well for her characters, and I swear she served looks every single time. I was gagged. Honestly, someone needs to do a Pinterest with screenshots of all of her outfits. I genuinely think she's a style icon. I think Anong is literally one of the best dressed characters of all time in Thai dramas. Oh my god, it was a joy. As someone who loves fashion, every time she showed up on screen, I was like, yes, girlie, you ate that up. Like, it was so nice, you guys. So for me, definitely it was an highlight of the show. I was like, every time I was just waiting for her to show up in a new, beautiful, like, outfit. Alright, now for the rewatchability. So for me, this show, honestly, would I rewatch it? Yes. I would rewatch it, although I'm gonna be honest, I say this, but I know I probably won't rewatch it simply because I don't like long shows. I don't like to rewatch long shows. It just takes so long. I love rewatching short shows, like eight episodes or less. I'm just like, okay, this is like, usually when I'm in a mood for a rewatch, I need to rewatch it now, and I need to rewatch it like that day. So obviously if the show is 16 1-hour episodes, it's not gonna work that way. Because I don't one day, yes, I could fit 16 hours in one day, but I do need to sleep and do other things, you know? So that just doesn't work. So that's why I love small mini series, because I can rewatch them any day. Like I can decide at 6 p.m, oh shit, I want to rewatch this, and finish it by fucking midnight, you know? Like it works. But to be honest, I do see myself like in a couple of years rewatching this. I think I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think it's a really good show to binge watch. Again, I think I binged the first like 7 or 8 episodes in one time. Actually, I started this show when I was at immigration, bitch. I was waiting at immigration to give them all of my papers, okay, to get my stamp on my passport, and I was eating it up. It was the best immigration trip ever. I could not care less about how much I was waiting. I was like, I need to know what's gonna happen. I was obsessed, okay? So I do think that this is a show with a high rewatch value. If you have of time on your hand, and if you're not someone who overthinks things, because for me, there's so many shows that I always want to rewatch. And you know what, this is why I'm like excited about this podcast. It's because I'm like, okay, now I need to actually rewatch it for real right now, not in 6 months, not in 5 years, right now, so I can make an episode about it. Because I'm so bad, I'm always like, oh, I want to rewatch this, and then I don't rewatch it, or I rewatch it only like 6 months later. I think sometimes I need to hype myself a lot to rewatch a show for no reason, because I don't know, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm in the mood, and like 5 minutes later I'm not in the mood anymore. I'm just an extremely indecisive, extremely like, I change my mind every 5 seconds. I'm very unstable. If you want stability, that ain't me, bestie, okay? But in my opinion, the rewatchability of this is good because the characters, especially like, again, mostly Wishai and Anong, are so good, so endearing. The couple is so good. And also, there's not really like anything to be spoiled or whatever. Like, you can still rewatch it and still enjoy most of it, just like you watched it the first time. So for me, it works quite well, and I would rewatch it. I probably won't, again, I know myself, but I would. So lastly, for the rating. Now, the rating of this show is an 8 out of 10 for me. Just like Spare Me Your Mercy, also with Turtanapop, also released in 2024, I rated this 8.5 first, but to be honest, towards the end, this show kind of lost me. I loved it so much. Honestly, if I could, I would have judged it off of the first like 8, 9, or 10 episodes. I would have given it like a 9 out of 10. That's how much I love the first half of the show. But the second half for me is much, much weaker and kind of lost me at times. And so for me, there was a lot of flaws where the lack of development for the other characters kind of became to be really felt towards the second half of the show. And yeah, did impede in my enjoyment of it, especially towards the end. Like in the last few episodes, I was kind of over it. So that's why I would give it an 8 out of 10. But to be honest, this is the kind of show where the grade doesn't necessarily reflect how much I care about the show. Like, for example, I'll give you another example. I would say I would grade like Lovesick, like a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. But it's one of my favorite shows. It's one of my comfort shows that I've been watching for so long, since practically I started watching Thai dramas. I've been rewatching it almost every year because I love it so much. I know it's flawed, I know it's not good in many instances, but I think it's one of the most like rawest and realest shows. And in that way that I feel about Lovesick, it's the same. Here I give it an 8 out of 10, but it's a show that made me feel. And honestly, this is all I ask for shows. You know, I've watched over 400 Thai dramas. I watch a lot of shows every year. And lately, I feel like every year I become more and more jaded, less and less excited about shows. And I kind of hate that. I miss the Axelle that was excited about every single show she started and really like remembered every detail about them and was really into them. But after point when you've watched again more than 400 Thai dramas, comes a point that you just kind of become a lot more jaded. And for me, the fact that this show managed to like really win me over so quickly, again, I was at immigration in the fucking queue, okay? For me, it shows me that this show did something right for sure. And it was really, really good. So even though it's an 8 out of 10 because I cannot really forgive like the messy writing, etc., in my opinion, this show was one of the most important Thai dramas released in 2024, and it's a show that I'm gonna cherish for a long time, if not the whole show, at least the fucking outfits, okay? Now, how I would fix it. Oh my god. So how I would fix it is I think I would definitely develop everyone more, apart from Anong and Wishai. I think they're developed to just like they're developed maybe even sometimes a little bit too much. And I think I would develop them more from the get-go. So for example, we have like a whole episode at I think it's episode 6 or 7 or something like that, where we have Anong being completely heartbroken over Wishai, and it's kind of an episode where not that much happens, and we see kind of Anong's more like childish and vindictive like side, which I did enjoy. Again, I love a flawed character, so I really love this side of Anong. Like, even though she's a little bit annoying in that episode, I'm like, I get you, girl, like, you're kind of childish, like, it works with her character. But the way that I would fix it is, instead of having this whole episode like about her being sad over Wishai, like, why not introduce then, for example, the love story between Shat and Chantorn, or like develop the brothers, the queer story, for example, with the brother, because for example, like the oldest brother who's queer, like we see that he has his boyfriend, he has like a tiff with his boyfriend, and then the boyfriend disappears from most of the show and then comes back at the demand of Wishai in like the second to last or the last episode. And you're like, oh, okay. So yes, you did put a queer character in a show from the 40s. That's great. But, and also we have Wishai being like super accepting and kind of an ally, which kind of, in my opinion, did not make so much sense. Like, it's like the feminist rant that Anong goes into in the voiceover episode 1. I'm kind of like, girly, I don't think any woman in the 40s spoke like that. Just like I don't think any man in the 40s, any straight man in the 40s, as like hot zaddy and as like fair and educated as Wishai is, would like defend gay rights like this. Like so openly, like basically Wishai goes and talk to the brother and say, love is love. Basically he says like, love is love. I'm like, girly, we're in the 40s. Like, I don't think it's very realistic, and I don't need every show to be realistic, but sometimes it's so like, it's a little bit performative, you know what I mean? So I just wish like maybe Wishai's like allyship would have been a little bit more subdued. I think it makes sense for him to be a queer ally, like talk Valentina again, but it doesn't fully work, in my opinion, to be like so like, love is love, like basically like, it's not wrong to love who you love. I'm like, bitch, in the 40s ain't no one speaking like this. I mean, maybe another queer person, but Wishai is straight as fuck, unfortunately. He would be an iconic bisexual, I have to say. All I have to say is that I do think that during a lot of the plot, if we had like a B plot going on with the other characters, with the queer brother, with Piprasit, with Pishai, with all of these characters also having their own stories and their own storylines, it would have made the show feel a little bit fuller, especially once Wishai and Anong get together. Because usually, let's be honest, I mean, that's my opinion. When a ship gets together, for me, the show kind of gets a little bit boring most of the time. I think this is why, for me, all of my favorite shows that do feature like heavily some romance, there's a big plot going on outside of the couple, so it kind of distracts us, and so you don't get bored. But I wish that those side characters would have been more developed, because then once Wishai and Anong get together, we wouldn't feel like, oh, okay, we're like, kind of, oh, the climax has already happened, but now we have like 5 or 6 more episodes to go through. You know what I mean? So that's how I would fix it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of fixing to do, but it's not like major fixing. It's just little fixing here, little fixing there. You know what I mean? And lastly, who would like this show? I honestly, truly believe most people will like this show. I think it's a very, very likable show. I think, you know what, I'm gonna do a fucking crazy ass comparison right now. Right now, I've been rewatching for the past week Desperate Housewives. In my opinion, Desperate Housewives has always been an iconic and amazing show. I love that show. Honestly, I've been like super shocked watching it in 2025 and realizing how much it still stands and so timeless. I swear to God, there's so many aspects of this that literally could happen today in 2025. We wouldn't bat an eye. It's really crazy how little us as a society we've changed. And honestly, I feel like sometimes we've gone back. I think in a way, Desperate Housewives is more progressive than 2025 USA. Like, it's crazy. And I'm laughing because I would cry. I cry about this. So, you know. So in the same way, why I'm making this comparison is that I think Desperate Housewives has this quality where it doesn't have to have the best, like, most thought out plots, but it works because it has great main characters that are flawed. Again, I love my flawed characters that are very flawed, that are a little bit dumb at times, but it works in the way that Anong and Wish I work. They are very dumb at times, both of them, and they are also very good, very iconic, very memorable, and they work. And in that sense, I feel like again, crazy comparison to make, but My Cherie Amour has this kind of same aspects from Desperate Housewives, where you can just watch it at any time and just enjoy it. It has this timeless idea of like like family drama, love, all these things, betrayal, that kind of always work. And for me, My Cherie Amour works more in that aspect than a lot of other Lacorns, because it is a little bit more original in its characters, in its female lead, which is like, again, I adore Anong. I'm an Anong stan. Let me be clear about that. So it just, in my opinion, this show would be enjoyed by most people, just like Desperate Housewives. Low-key, I don't think anyone could hate Desperate Housewives. I think Desperate Housewives is a masterpiece. I said what I said, and I think My Cherie Amour also is. So I just really love this show. In my opinion, it was one of the highlights of 2024. It was a show that came out and I did not expect to slay so hard. I really had zero expectation for this, and I think in terms of being a cultural reset, of having perhaps the best female lead a Lacorn has ever had, of having great performances and amazing chemistry, you guys. Oh my god, this pairing was so good. I think this show worked so well. It had a lot of flaws, which again cannot make me give it a better grade than 8 out of 10. But in my heart, it's more than an 8 out of 10. It was a freaking good time, and in my opinion, that's all that matters. So anyways, that was it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.